Let's set up a race. Achilles, the fastest runner in Greece, against a tortoise. To make it interesting, the tortoise gets a head start, let's say 100 meters. And let's say Achilles is 10 times faster. He's a legendary athlete. This should be over quickly. Achilles takes off. He sprints 100 meters to where the tortoise started, but by the time he gets there, the tortoise has crawled forward. 10 meters. Not much, but enough. So now Achilles runs those 10 meters. In that time, the tortoise moves another meter. He covers that meter. The tortoise crawls 1/10 of a meter. He covers the 10th. The tortoise is now 1/100th of a meter ahead. You see where this is going. Every time Achilles reaches the spot where the tortoise just was, the tortoise has inched a little bit further ahead. The gap shrinks. 100, 10, 1, 1/10, 100th, 1,000th, it gets unimaginably small. But it never hits zero. There is always a next step. Always another sliver of distance to close before you can even think about the sliver after that. And so, by this logic, Achilles never catches the tortoise. He is trapped in an infinite sequence of catch-up steps. Each one brings him closer, none of them brings him there. Now, obviously, he does catch it. You know that, I know that. A 5-year-old watching the race would know that. The faster runner overtakes the slower one. That's just what happens in the world. And yet, the argument is surprisingly hard to actually refute. Try it. Where does it go wrong? Is it wrong to say Achilles has to reach the tortoise's current position before passing it? No, that seems right. Is it wrong that the tortoise moves during that time? No, it does move. Is it wrong that there's always a next step? No, you can always have the remaining distance. Every individual piece of the argument seems perfectly sound, and yet the conclusion is absurd. That question was first posed about 2,500 years ago by a philosopher named Zeno from a small Greek colony called Elea on the southern coast of Italy. Zeno was a student of Parmenides, who taught that all change is illusion, that reality at its deepest level is one unchanging whole. Zeno's paradoxes were weapons built to defend that position. They were designed to show that our everyday intuitions about motion, about space, about time, collapse the moment you push on them hard enough. So let's look at it carefully. Strip away Achilles and the tortoise for a moment. Forget the characters. The argument, at its core, is about covering a distance. To walk from here to there, you first have to cover half the distance, then half of what remains, then half of that. You are making progress, obviously, but you're generating an infinite list of tasks in the process. Half, then a quarter, then an eighth, then a 16th. Each step is smaller than the last, but there is always another one waiting. The claim is, you cannot complete infinitely many tasks, and if you can't, you can never arrive. And if you write out the total distance covered, you get a sum, 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8 plus 1/16, and so on forever. This is the kind of object mathematicians call an infinite series, and the real question Zeno is posing underneath the story of the race is this: can you add up infinitely many positive numbers and get a result that isn't infinite? The answer, as modern mathematics tells us, is yes. And the tool that lets us say so is called a limit. Let me walk you through it. Consider that sum again. Each term is exactly half of the previous one. This makes it a geometric series. The word geometric just means each term is a fixed multiple of the one before. Mathematicians write this with a compact notation. There's a large sigma which is used to add a sequence together. Below it, you place a variable, usually n, with a starting value. In our case, n equals 1. Above the sigma, you write where it ends. Here, that's an infinity symbol, meaning the sum continues without bound. And to the right of the sigma, you write the rule that generates each term, 1/2 to the n. So the whole expression reads, the sum, from n equals 1 to infinity, of 1/2 to the n. That's the object. Now, how do we evaluate it? We obviously can't sit down and add infinitely many numbers one at a time. We'd never stop. That's the whole problem Zeno is pointing at. So instead, we look at what happens along the way. We compute partial sums. Add just the first term. You get 1/2. Add the first two terms. 3/4. The first three, 7/8. The first four, 15/16. You can keep going as long as you like. The partial sums form a sequence of their own, and that sequence has a pattern you can see immediately. Each partial sum is closer to 1 than the last, and none of them ever exceeds 1. They creep toward it from below, getting closer and closer without ever overshooting. This is where the concept of a limit enters. The limit of a sequence is the value that the terms get arbitrarily close to as you look further and further out. We write this as the limit, as n goes to infinity, of the partial sum s sub n equals 1. A small note on what this notation means. The phrase as n goes to infinity does not mean n arrives at infinity. There is no arrival. It means as n grows without bound. We are describing the behavior of the sequence as it goes on and on, not the result of finishing it. That distinction will matter in a moment. The infinite sum equals 1, exactly 1, not approaches 1 or is approximately 1. It equals 1. The mathematics is settled. So, problem solved? Zeno refuted? Well, here is where it gets interesting. The math is correct. Nobody disputes it. The series converges. The sum is 1. But go back and listen to Zeno's actual question. He didn't ask what the sum converges to. He asked how you finish. The limit tells you the destination. It says if you could somehow complete all the steps, here is where you'd end up. What it does not tell you is how a process with no last step ever terminates. Think about this carefully. You go from 1/2 to 3/4 to 7/8 to 15/16. You keep going. There is no final term. No step where you place the last fraction on the pile and say, done. You approach 1 endlessly, and then somehow you are there. The word then in that sentence is doing enormous philosophical work, and the mathematics doesn't touch it. There's a thought experiment from 1954 that puts a sharp point on exactly this gap. The philosopher James Thomson asked you to imagine a lamp with a single switch. You're sitting in a dark room. At the start, the lamp is off. After 1 minute, you switch it on. The room lights up. Half a minute later, you switch it off. Dark again. A quarter minute later, on. An eighth of a minute, off. A 16th, on. And so on. Each switch happening in half the time of the one before. The flicking getting faster and faster. Now, the total time across all those switches is itself a geometric series. 1 minute plus half a minute plus a quarter, and so on. We just showed this converges. It converges to 2 minutes. So after exactly 2 minutes, every switch in the infinite sequence has been flipped. All of them. The supertask, as philosophers call it, is over. And Thomson asks a simple question. Is the lamp on or off? Think about that for a moment. The sequence of states goes on, off, on, off, on, off, without end. It doesn't approach anything. On and off aren't numbers getting closer to a value. They're two states, alternating, forever. There is no last switch. And the limit of the series tells you the total time elapsed, but it says absolutely nothing about the final state. The lamp has to be either on or off. It can't be both. It can't be neither. But there is no principled way to determine which one it is. The mathematics gives you the duration. It doesn't give you the outcome. And that is the core of the philosophical problem. The convergence of a series is a statement about what partial sums approach. It describes a destination. It is not a description of what happens when an infinite process completes, because the very idea of an infinite process completing is precisely the thing in question. The limit is an answer to a question that Zeno didn't ask. Some philosophers argue that supertasks can be completed, that the math is enough, that asking, but how do you finish, is a confused question. Others argue that a completed infinity is incoherent, that the convergent series is a useful fiction we project onto what is really continuous motion. There is, to this day, no consensus. Let me leave you with one more image, something that might sit with you longer than any of the equations did. Take a piece of paper and draw a right triangle. Make both legs 1 unit long, the simplest triangle you can build. Now, what is the length of the hypotenuse? The Pythagorean theorem tells you it's the square root of 1 squared plus 1 squared, the square root of 2. Write it out as a decimal, 1.414213556. And the digits keep going. They never stop. They never settle into a repeating pattern. This number is what mathematicians call irrational. No fraction, no ratio of whole numbers equals it exactly. Its decimal expansion is infinite. If you tried to write it all down, you would never finish. The number itself has no last digit. And yet, you just drew it. The hypotenuse is right there on your page. You can put your finger at one end and trace it to the other in a single smooth motion. It is a finite distance. But the number that names that distance, the number that tells you exactly how long it is, has no end. And that, I think, is what makes Zeno's paradox so durable. It doesn't reveal a flaw in motion. It points at a gap between our formal tools and the world those tools describe. The math says the series converges, the answer is finite, everything is consistent. The mechanism, the actual how of completing an infinite process, remains open. We've named the destination. We haven't explained the journey.